Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Five Door Media podcast with another episode in season 4, where we are exploring how technology, software, and AI are transforming the future of the cleaning industry. Today's guest has helped lead that transformation from the front lines. Amar Ghose is the CEO and co founder of ZenMaid, one of the first and most beloved software platforms built specifically for the residential cleaning businesses. ZenMaid has empowered thousands of cleaning company owners to streamline operations, communicate better with customers and teams, and reclaim their time. Amar brings a unique global perspective to the conversation, not only as a tech founder and a cleaning industry advocate, but as someone who's built a remote first, mission driven company with users across the world. In this episode, we're talking about how automation is helping owners scale without burning out, why simple systems can outperform complicated ones, and how AI is unlocking the new possibilities for cleaning businesses of all sizes. Amar, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
Thanks, Drew. That's a hell of a welcome.
Nice. You know what? On this show, it is common that someone says something about the bio or the introduction, and I love that because I like writing them. I like doing some research. I think I might have said this on the show before. One of my favorite interviewers is it's silly, but it's his name's Sean Evans, and he's from that Hot Ones show.
Yeah.
And I just really and it's so silly because he hosts a show where people eat hot wings and get asked questions, but he does such a really good job, and like I love watching him and learning from him and things like that. So I appreciate it. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here. I know you're a busy guy, and I know you've got a lot going on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be on our show today. So let's set the scene. As I like to say, let's talk about the technology shift that's happening in the cleaning world right now. I think it's cool because you've had a front row seat to how cleaning businesses and their owners are evolving over time. From your vantage point, what's been the biggest shift in mindset when it comes to technology over the last few years?
So over the last few years, I would say uh, we've definitely just seen essentially as an industry, people just really warm up specifically to digital technology because like people have always been using technology in some way, whether it's like some of the tools and equipment, or just even just a variety of other things. But there was definitely a bit more of apprehension maybe or just people were kind of like holding back when it came to I think a lot of particularly like the cloud-based stuff, and I think that the industry has really like kind of caught up there in a way where it's just like it's trusted, it's the default, and that's really opening up so many more paths for cleaning businesses to grow these days because they have access to agencies like yours, they have access to tools like ours, and there's just less resistance to experiencing the value of those things.
100%. Yeah. And the conversations we've been having on this specific season of the podcast is we've noticed that technology is no longer just something that it's no longer a nice to have rather than it's an essential, right? An essential thing to businesses. Are you starting to see that on your end as well, where it's not just a time saver, but it's really a growth driver as well? And what do you think is behind that change?
So I think yeah, how you just said it, I think is quite apt. Where it went from being an advantage to now it's a must have. It's table stakes, right? If you're not using a software, it doesn't have to be ZenMaid, but you need to be using something for scheduling where you're not having to re-enter your schedule or recreate it every single like week and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, it's definitely been interesting to see that. I think that the digital almost like revolution or like transformation that we've seen the industry go through, it's just opened up so many more ways for people to win. But also like what you said, some of the requirements to win have also changed. But it feels like compared to maybe 20 years ago, there's just so many more ways to create and run a successful cleaning business compared to like just like before, and that's largely thanks to technology.
Love that. Very cool. I want to know a little bit of your story. How did you get into not just the technology world, but the cleaning world specifically? What's your background?
So I grew up in Silicon Valley. My dad was an engineer at Hewlett Packard and Intel and all those. Funnily enough, me and my sister both went like more kind of liberal arts, sort of like paths, and then worked our way back into tech like over the years. But I think that just like tech or whatever was like I grew up kind of around it. So before starting ZenMaid, I was working a job in tech sales in San Francisco. So tech was all I really knew before kind of starting this company. But I did, as a side project, I'd always been a little bit entrepreneurial, looking for kind of side hustles when I was younger. Stumbled across a blog post about starting a maid service and ended up running a maid service for about 14 months in Southern California. And we built out our own little website and little back end to do some very basic like calendar kind of management. And one of my friends approached me during that time and was like, "Hey, I think that we can turn this into a software to offer to other maid services." And that's literally how the journey began back in 2013.
I love it. Yeah, that's just I've enjoyed asking that question because everybody's had like different journeys and how they ended up not just in the technology world, which obviously that's what we're talking a lot about this season, but in this cleaning specific niche as well. It's
Yeah.
I've loved hearing those stories. So very interesting. I do love you and you said your sister, right?
Oh.
Your
Yeah.
sister and you,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
more that liberal arts path. I love that. That's very
Yeah.
cool. Let's talk about ZenMaid a little bit. I think ZenMaid, as we work with more and more cleaning businesses, and we see different softwares, different CRMs, and things like that. I think ZenMaid has built a really strong reputation for being user friendly and approachable, which is a huge thing in the software world. Because honestly, taking that first step into a new software is the scariest a lot of
Yeah.
times for people. So I think I've heard a lot about ZenMaid being that like really user friendly and approachable. What was the original vision behind the platform? I'm curious. And how did you identify the gap that it was built to fill in the marketplace?
Yeah. So, one thing that I do want to say is that like it's very easy to connect the dots in hindsight that like most of this was not actually consciously thought out. I can tell you kind of how we got here, but I'd be lying if I said that it was like that it was highly intentional. We were taking a very lean startup type approach. So the initial MVP that we were trying to launch with was essentially a very basic booking form along with a simple kind of scheduling tool and some basic reminders. And the reminders were SMS and email. And we really thought that the booking form was going to be like the wow, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread, and that maybe we'd go viral. And like, we had no idea what we were doing, but we very badly missed the mark with the actual release of our initial booking forms. And almost by chance, we found a lot of people that were just signing up and were sticking with us simply because they loved the simple scheduling with a couple of like communications that were just very um specifically thought out for cleaning businesses. So it was very plug and play. And that was essentially like what we lucked onto. And from there, that almost became like our thesis that even now it's like, we've been doing this for 13 years and it's still simple scheduling software. And we've added on a ton of other features, but at our core, it's you manage this basic schedule that we've made very easy to use. And behind the scenes, we'll take care of most of your communications. We can take care of like the 90% of appointments that just go completely according to plan. ZenMaid can pretty much just make it so you have almost no mind share goes to those appointments. So you can just focus on the ones, where we can't solve the problem. A cleaner doesn't show up.
Yeah. No, I love that origin story of simplicity because I
Mhm.
mean sometimes that is all people are asking for. Like
Yeah.
they, I mean, I think software and technology as a whole, we can go to 0 to 100 really quick. And like
Yeah.
a lot of times we do that out of our maybe the software, the technology's curiosity,
Mhm.
not with the end user in mind. So I
Yeah.
guess my next question is I love the origin of simplicity, but also how has the software evolved over the years? And how do you take user feedback into consideration for those evolutions?
Yeah, definitely. So, we So I mean, the software has evolved over the years in so many different ways that in many ways it feels like playing whack-a-mole, because it's like every time you introduce something new, it's either something breaks somewhere or you immediately see how you can make something else better. So there's no part of ZenMaid that I will ever consider to be like fully complete. You know what I mean?
Mm.
That like we can always be doing little things better. And so that over time has led to a much more robust system that can just handle a lot more like stuff and everything. In terms of customer feedback, I mean, I personally think that we take kind of like customer feedback into account more than probably any like at least of like our competition, but I mean, I'd say of like most software companies, to be honest, because essentially what we have is we have so many different levels or like layers to the feedback that we're able to get. So we have a group on Facebook that has 10,000 maid service owners that are in there that we can always ask questions to about a variety of things. Then we have a smaller group on Facebook that's exclusive just to our users. We have a Slack channel that has maybe 30 of our power users that are like on it. And then we have, I believe, three team members who work for ZenMaid who also run maid services that use ZenMaid. And so we have just feedback from so many different like ways that depending on what the feature is that we're developing, sometimes it's we're talking to the users or the potential users before we even start doing anything. Other times we have a lot of clarity around what the end feature is going to look like. So we might go through and build out a decent chunk of it and then be going back to a specific cohort of users to make sure that we haven't missed anything obvious, that we're not going to confuse people with like the initial release and stuff like that. And so, yeah, we try to incorporate it in a lot of different ways. And then, like, we also try to do that with essentially like industry partners, right? So, like, you and I will probably jump on another call at some point where, like, we obviously can't make any promises, but we always want to know, like, hey, like, what are your clients seeing or what are you seeing from your clients? What can we do that might help you or like coaches of the industry to better help like and to serve like their clients. And so, our mission as a company is to make maid services successful. And we just strongly believe that if we do that, as long as we do a good job on the software, eventually enough people will, sign up for it and pay for it that, we're financially rewarded. Like we can't complain about the lives that we live. So
I love that. Very cool. Do you have a story of a maybe a feature that you've added in the past that came due to that user feedback, that kind of was like, "Oh, man, why didn't we think of that? That was brilliant."
yeah, so one of my favorite features that we've added in for ZenMaid is one that I'm really proud of it because it's one of the features that I genuinely hope that all of our competitors copy. And so the feature is it's like an SOS like alert system. And so what happened was when we were at our team retreat in Zandvoort, I think, in the Netherlands. We had a team retreat there, and Stephanie Pipkin, who hosts our podcast and runs her own maid service that I think has like 20, 30 cleaners, something like that. She's got like a pretty sizable like maid service, and she essentially was talking to our team in just a very random discussion, like sat on the couch having kind of like a one-on-one with like one of the devs with a couple people sitting around. And she was describing a situation that had happened to her cleaner. I think it might have been the past like week or something, where the cleaner had essentially come to a client's home. The client was drinking at 10 in the morning and essentially
Oh,
tried
man.
to corner the cleaner and like make advances at her. And Stephanie had to get this cleaner like out of there. And one of the devs is standing right there and goes, hey, like, Uber has like an alert system. Why don't we build an alert system like that? And so that was something that what was really cool for me was that came from the team, and then it got released a couple months later, and I wasn't really involved with anything in between, but the team just really recognized that as an opportunity to make our clients like more safe. And like, granted that came from someone that's on the ZenMaid team, but it's like she's on the ZenMaid team because she was a client of ours
Yeah.
for 5 years and then approached us like afterwards. And that was just one where like I didn't catch that when I was listening in on this conversation. And someone else on the team was like, hey, I think we can do something about that. And that was just the coolest thing as like as an entrepreneur was just seeing seeing the team like not only come up with that idea, but then also execute it from start to finish. And now seeing it like live in ZenMaid for like all cleaners.
I love that. That's so cool. And like, I'm trying to think, there's so many other industries where some sort of feature like that would be so valuable. I mean, I've heard stories about realtors,
Mhm.
going to show a home and things like that. And
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's a really cool feature. Love that.
yeah,
And also, yeah, props to your developer who like called that out in the moment
yeah,
and made it happen. Very cool.
definitely.
Love that. Also, let's talk a little bit about owner sanity and how technology can help out with that, and by using automations and systems like that you've built in your software. I mean, ZenMaid is, I think, known for helping owners get out of the day to day, which is a very common conversation in this industry, right? Like, how do you put down the mop or drop the mop and become a CEO?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is a focus? Why is that focus on automation and time freedom so important, do you think, to this industry? And then how has ZenMaid realized that, and what have they done to help?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what it is that really what you want as a maid service owner is you want to have as much system and process in place. And honestly, it's not that important whether it's an office manager doing it or whether it's a software doing it, as long as it's not the owner doing it and it gets done consistently, right? That like, more power to you if you have people that are doing that. The power in software though is that it happens generally more consistently, maybe with a little bit less flexibility than you working with like an actual human, but it also makes it that much easier for you to then pass off your scheduling system to somebody else. And so, for a lot of maid service owners, if they were writing out their schedule by hand and doing that, or even using Google Calendar, if they tried to bring someone in to do their scheduling work and to essentially manage their business, there's going to be a massive hurdle and a massive margin of error and things that can just go wrong during that process, as opposed to if you do a handoff with a system like ZenMaid, or like lots of our great competitors, right? Like, like if you're listening to this and you use pen and paper or you're using like Google Calendar, I encourage you to sign up for a scheduling software. It doesn't have to be mine, but just like you will be better served with anything that like other than those, right? Like something specialized. So yeah. And then what was the second part of your question?
Let's talk about specifically. I mean, you kind of answered it. It was like, and
Yeah.
how ZenMaid has realized that problem and what you've done to help owners get out of that day to day. So
Yeah.
you kind of answer that by just using
Yeah.
the
So
software to replace yourself. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And like at the most like basic like thing, what we really just looked at is so every single maid service owner on the planet, or even like solo cleaner on the planet, they have one thing in common, and it's not that they're good at cleaning, right? It's that they have to manage a schedule if they're going to like have a successful business. That if you don't know where you're expected to be and what you're expected to do, it's only a matter of time until you disappoint clients and go out of business. So what we tried to do is we tried to take that simple schedule of just making sure that you don't have to recreate that, so that happens as automatically as possible. And then we're trying to take that basic information about that schedule and trying to automate as much of the communication that every maid service should be doing, right? So that would be like a confirmation, a reminder, maybe a follow up, maybe like if they don't book again, then a follow up, 6 weeks later, that sort of thing, and making sure those things happen like on autopilot. And then of course we've added on a bunch of things from there, but like what I was saying like initially is essentially we want to make it easier and more systematized for you as like the owner to hand off to your future office manager, because like what you were saying, Drew, that's what opens up people's time to actually get some of that freedom and time with family, and what essentially like why maid service owners are oftentimes starting these businesses.
I hear that, and also I also hear there are so many business owners in the cleaning industry just overwhelmed so much just by the idea of technology as a whole,
Mhm.
to where let's say they are pen and paper, or let's say they are still Google Calendar or things like that, and just the thought of a software
Mhm.
is stressing them out. Where and then there's obviously softwares like yours or other people in this season that we've interviewed, that do 100 things, right?
Yeah.
What is a good first thing someone could do with a software to dip their toes into this world of using technology to help them run their company? Where should people start? That's not super aggressive or really intimidating, but it
Yeah.
gets them into the water to where they're starting to feel, how good this could be.
So I feel like that's gonna. I'm not really sure what that would be in terms of like introduction to technology. I mean, the first thing that really comes to mind would be just any tech that's more like set it and forget it. So anything like any sort of like widget that you can set up on your website, or just getting a basic website. If you don't have a website, then maybe just getting a website might be the initial win, depending on where people are. If you're talking about like a scheduling software specifically, that you're talking about going from Google Calendar or pen and paper, and you're looking at moving to ZenMaid or to another like software like that, to me, it's forget about all of the features that like we all offer and focus on just recreating your schedule, because just recreating your schedule on these tools, that alone will be like worth it as a starting point for the organization that it'll bring to your business. But that's something that we encourage for ZenMaid, where it's, if you're coming over for Google Calendar, we can help to move over like your schedule and stuff like that. But and from competing softwares like as well. But what we really encourage people to do is, if you're coming over from something that's quite basic, then focus on just nailing the basics in ZenMaid. And then over time, we can add in and show you all of these features. But a surefire way to overwhelm someone that's already feeling like that pressure from technology is to bring them into ZenMaid and then try to get them to install a booking form and to do payroll and to integrate these softwares and to do credit card processing. And there's all these amazing things that ZenMaid and most of our competitors like offer. But if you try to do all of them at once, you're setting yourself up for failure. So I think it's just not biting off more than you can chew, and just realizing that like there's no like rush, right? It's okay if it takes 3 to 6 months for you to start getting the full power out of whatever software is that you use. It's better that than to give up because you tried to rush it.
Brick by brick, right?
Yeah.
I say that a lot. Okay, we talked about those beginners and the people that are nervous about it. Let's talk about it more about like the advanced
Yeah.
side of things, and specifically, let's look ahead to AI and just the next wave of innovation that's happening in our world right now. You've been a big advocate for AI and emerging technology. From your perspective, I'm curious, what's the biggest opportunity AI presents to cleaning businesses right now?
So to me, AI it's still like very much a developing tool. So I would still be hesitant to be using AI for almost any sort of like finished product, but I think that it's a great supplement to most things, right? So for example, I've seen a lot of maid service owners that are getting great use out of Chat GPT, just using it as like maybe like a thought partner, or for marketing ideas, right? Actually, like completely forgotten about until just now. We've actually trained an AI on all of ZenMaid's blog content. So if you go to, I think it's app.zenmaid.com/coach, you can go and like ask it for marketing ideas if you're in like rural Pennsylvania or something, and it'll give you like 10 marketing ideas that might like work better there than other places. And so I think that it can be really useful for that sort of like sort of stuff. But like I wouldn't be using AI to necessarily like build you a website yet, right? Or like I could see a future in which you could use like an AI type thing to build like a custom version of ZenMaid, right, for you, of just like, oh, like I only want these modules and like want it to be set up according to this. I could see that happening in the in the future, but I still think we're a ways away from that. And the primary problem with that last idea that I just shared, which is the problem with a lot of these things, is with AI, it's like there's no one to blame if things go wrong. And so like a lot of like what ZenMaid has to think about is that a lot of the stuff is like it's our stamp of approval. So if we put an AI and then AI hallucinates and gives you a completely wrong like report, are we going to be liable for that? Probably not. Like, we'll probably put that into terms of service to make sure that we're not. But it's like, that's not the experience that we want for our customers, right? Like, I want to provide everyone a guaranteed experience. I don't want it to be hit or miss. And so that's where it's tough. But I'm a very like firm believer that the technology is going to get there, right? Like, I'm not like a hater on it. I just don't think it's there yet.
That AI really do be hallucinating
Yeah.
sometimes and just
Yeah.
coming up with some stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Definitely.
see that on the marketing side for sure. Um, I mean, are there specific use cases that you're seeing now or maybe in the future, marketing, admin, even like customer service, where you're seeing AI already making like a measurable impact?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, I mean, I think there's a lot of maid service owners out there that are already using AI to essentially clean up their communications and to communicate like more professionally. And I mean that alone, I think, is worth like its weight in gold. Of just like, yeah, just coming across better in all like written communication. I think that honestly is something that it seems like a low bar, but that's an easy way to stand out in the industry because there's so many people that aren't communicating like that, especially like solo cleaners and stuff like that. And so that's been like a really big one. And then I would also say for marketing campaigns, that's like one thing that I've noticed is just that most cleaning business owners, some are going to have marketing backgrounds, but oftentimes it's that they're either entrepreneurial or they're really good like cleaners that then now
Yeah.
have a business. And so in both cases I've seen that AI is very helpful for generating marketing ideas or getting like marketing campaigns across the finish line, but I think you would know more about that than than most.
Yeah, we hear those stories. I call them like accidental entrepreneurs, where
Yeah.
someone starts cleaning a few houses on the side for some extra cash, and the next thing they know, they're full and they have staff and things like that. So we are seeing AI, helpful for those kind of people that can maybe easier to write SOPs, easier to write processes for internal, their business and things like that. But yeah, we definitely see that a lot. Do you have anything that's coming next? I think you mentioned like things you're not fully trusting AI with currently, but or is there things you're excited about coming up with AI, or where do you think you see things going, even for ZenMaid and like AI tools inside of ZenMaid and what that could possibly look like?
Um I
Perfect
think
world.
that
If AI gets its act together, stops hallucinating, right? Like
yeah,
where do you see the possibilities?
so like I can definitely see um I think with AI, one of the things that I've noticed with it is that it seems like one of the primary use cases of AI right now is that it seems to be much better at taking like voice to text and then turning it into something like useful. And I think some people really like that, other people don't. And so some people are going to very much prefer the way that things are. But I could see in like a future case where, for example, you open up ZenMaid and you click like a voice button and you go, cool, I just gave an estimate to this person. Here's how much I told them it was going to be. And like here's like some details on it, and then ZenMaid would be able to take that and to not just transcribe it, but to like take it and put all of that information into the relevant custom fields and what should go into notes and which customer it should actually be associated with and all that stuff. So that's like one like example there. I do think that there's going to be a lot of room for like not necessarily intelligent like scheduling, but intelligent suggestions, right? That one thing that we've found is that most maid service owners do not want to automate the scheduling of of stuff, that like actually they want a certain amount of control of the schedule, but that doesn't mean that they want to have to think through every single decision. And so I think that AI is going to make it much easier for us to be able to be like, oh, you just canceled this appointment or you just rescheduled this appointment. Here's three spots that it might make sense for you to put it in, click here to ignore or something along those lines, right? Um,
I'm
yeah.
laughing because entrepreneurs, of course, like we don't want to be in charge of everything, but we still want control if we do want to be in charge of
Yeah,
it. Like
exactly.
give us some control, right?
Some control, exactly, or the illusion of control.
The illusion, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, I think there's always going to be like chatbot kind of ideas and stuff like that. That so like internally for ZenMaid, one of the ways that we used AI was at our team retreat this year in Barcelona. We had a couple like we had the team split into four groups and then use AI to essentially vibe code client portals, and we
Mm.
essentially use those as prototypes, and then we're able to compare the different prototypes. And so that's one of the big things that's coming for ZenMaid in 2026 is we're working on client portals that are designed to really wow the end cleaning client, right? That we want anyone using ZenMaid to look like heroes to their like end clients. And so that's what we're working on designing right now.
I love that little sneak peek into next year. Very
Yeah.
cool. Let's talk about the human side of technology. I think you're in the world of technology that is empowering people.
Mhm.
I think one thing ZenMaid does really well is blend that technology with human empathy. You're helping owners feel supported, not overwhelmed, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
How do you balance that in product design and customer experience? I imagine when you're building a technology, your brain, it can just be all over the place with the endless opportunities that come with engineering and things like that. But how do you balance that, knowing a human's going to be using this on the other side? We can't go too crazy because it's still all about them.
I think it's just being really, really focused on essentially ZenMaid's like ICP, or like the ideal like client profile. And we know that we're essentially designing ZenMaid for like our moms or like our grandmothers, right? Where like that's like the expectation in terms of ease of use. And so that really keeps us humble about over engineering things. That it's something that I'm probably one of the ones who's constantly like reminding the team of. It's like, hey, like we're not our clients here, right? And that yeah, like essentially we're designed to be, kind of like the Apple, like it just works right out of the box and everything is kind of like magical, when like we're kind of a team of more like hackers, right? That might be like customizing PCs or running things on Linux or whatever. And it's just like a reminder of just like, hey, we've got to remember like who we're actually designing for. And I think also we've been doing this for 13 years, so we've had our fair share like of mistakes. And it's like when we overdo it, everyone loses, right? It's not like we've done
Mm.
anyone any favors by over engineering it. We've just created more work for ourselves, right? And so for me, I'm always focused on getting to like what is the simplest thing that we can do to get out quickly to just like make some of our users' lives easier, and then how do we iterate on that to then make it better and better. Right. But like we really focus on like time to value, that like how long it takes for our clients to actually experience like something better in the software.
I think you've got a hard job because it's not like every maid service business owner is the same. I think we talked about earlier, there's a giant spectrum of maid service business owners when it comes to knowledge of technology and openness to technology. I'm curious, those ICP, I'm sure you have multiple of them, right? Because due to that spectrum of technology knowledge that happens to be in this
Yeah.
industry, how do you balance that? How do you know this would make sense for this user, but not this one? How do we balance to make sure this feature works for everybody?
Yeah, definitely. So,
Especially too, I always say this
yeah.
too, with AI and like technology becoming less of a like, oh, that'd be nice to have, and just
Mhm.
the comfortability with technology as a whole, I think is growing at a pace we've
Yeah.
never seen before either. So I guess two questions there. One,
Yeah.
how do you balance the different types of users and their experience in technology? But also, how do you keep up with those people that are growing quickly to make sure their expectations that are growing with AI and technology, you're right there with them without alienating the people that are not growing that quickly?
Yeah, for sure. First thing is you mentioned that I've got like a hard job. It's like I don't really think so. I think it's the best job in the world, but that's just my opinion.
It's a
Um,
challenge
yeah,
though, right? It's
it,
a
it is a
challenge in
challenge.
your
Yeah, it,
world
it,
right
it,
now.
it
Yeah.
is a challenge. Yeah, no, it's a really great question. So there's a couple of things. So first of all, like we're not really concerned with people that kind of have like those expectations. If it's like there are things that make sense to our product development and there are things that don't, right? And we're not reacting to yeah, like trends, right? That like AI is
Mm.
definitely here to stay, but like there are logical ways to add it into our product, and when those opportunities arise, we will take them. And if we lose a couple of customers along the way because they think we should be doing that faster, we lose a couple of customers every month, like anyways, for other reasons, right? It's not really any different than that. That's a really interesting question, though, in terms of like how we think about the different sort of like ICPs and groups that we serve. So there's a couple of like of different things. First is like we have like our primary ICP that it's like first and foremost all development needs to like serve this cohort, and then we try to
Mm.
take into account essentially. I think we essentially go two cohorts on either side, and so we try to take into account those, but it's like we're very focused on who we're helping like first and foremost. So like right now, if you think about going like the cohort lower and we're working our way down, eventually we get down to like solo cleaners. And so to win with
Mm.
solo cleaners, that has a ton to do with our mobile apps and how we think about building the mobile apps, and it potentially being mobile first for those folks specifically, even though like the web app for for like our ICP is not going to be mobile like first. The other thing though that's interesting is that we essentially are beginning to see the trends of like what makes successful cleaning businesses, right? And like what are the commonalities, and really not just the commonalities, but where do they all kind of get to, right? And so
Mm.
what we've started really thinking about is generally if we are designing for some of like our medium or larger clients, what we are designing will generally always work for the smaller clients when they reach a certain size or when they realize that that is important. And so that's something that's been quite helpful, where a lot of the time it's we're developing something for the bigger folks and then we're adding in education components for the small medium folks, going, hey, this is why you should be considering running this report on a weekly basis, right? And so then that's how we almost bring some of these features like down like market. But in terms of usability, it's like I think we've got kind of that sweet spot where it's like,
Yeah.
if guys these size, like we're like, we want to make sure that, for example, an owner that's managing cleaners is going to be able to figure this out. We very rarely are going to develop something where it's like, oh, this will only work if someone has like an office manager, right? Just because that doesn't serve enough people.
So good. Very good. Let's talk about the Maid Summit. We were lucky enough to be a sponsor for the Maid Summit this year, so thanks for letting us be involved in that. I was blown away by the size and capacity of that event, and it's all ran digitally. I think one of the interesting conversations we've had on this season so far is technology companies, where the line is with their responsibilities for just providing a product and educating the industry.
Yeah.
And I think you guys obviously have taken that big leap in that Made Summit, to provide a space for people of this industry to come and learn. Tell me kind of the origin of that. How did that, whose crazy idea was that? And who said, no way, we can't do that? And then it turned into like, oh, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So, ZenMaid's mission is to make maid services successful. I'd said that earlier on the call that like that's our primary focus, and a lot of that came out of the fact that I'm a non-technical founder. So my initial co-founder Arun, he was the one that was working on the product, and we very much kind of set out what we were going to do. And then he would just kind of go off and just be working for sometimes weeks on end without really having anything to show me or anything along like those lines where like he didn't need my input. And so at some point after I'd kind of gotten some of the basics like in place, I began to spend more time thinking about how do I add value? How do I help this industry like outside of the product because I can't really impact the product. Me telling Arun
Mm,
more things that we need doesn't move the product any further. Like he's clearly the bottleneck there. We can't hire him any help. So what can I do? And
mm,
so essentially what we were thinking was like beyond that was what can we do that would really help the industry to be successful or help like the little guys to be successful just as much as kind of the big guys. And this was just kind of where the idea like came from. I'd seen a lot of internet marketers start doing it, I think in 2015 or so, 2014, 2015, and we did the Made Summit for the first time, I want to say in 2018 maybe. And so it was just one of those things where, we just were like, cool, how do we deliver as much value in like a very small amount of like of time? And yeah, I mean it worked better than we ever could have like imagined. um like we felt like everyone was doing us a favor by like speaking the first year, and then
yeah.
like by the end of the summit everyone had come back to us with feedback and we're like, thank you so much for like letting us speak, we can't wait for next year. And we were like, oh okay, like I guess there's going to be a next year, and I guess we can invite the speakers back. Like we were genuinely concerned that they like wouldn't want to
Yeah.
come back and do another presentation the next year. And so it was just really validating in like in many ways. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that are looking for expertise from some of these like amazing minds that are in the industry, but they can't yet afford to pay for the courses. And then also like I think as great as a lot of the coaches and the folks like the consultants in the industry like are, I think some are better at marketing than others. And I felt like the Made Summit was like a really almost like level playing field where it's like, hey, like it doesn't really matter sort of like how good at marketing you are. It's you deliver value on this and people are going to come sign up for your email list. They're going to come and like
Yeah.
sign up for like your course or whatever. And so yeah, it's been really really gratifying to see. And every year we have people that reach out after speaking that are like, this was my goal when I like joined the industry, because they joined in 2019 and like, attended one of the early summits and now they're speaking at it. And so, yeah, I don't know. I find it really like heartwarming. And I never could have imagined that it would turn into this.
I love it. Very cool. Yeah, it's a really cool event, and just so well run too. Like for it being all digital and how it is. And I think one thing I've learned too in just this, specifically the residential cleaning industry, people are thirsty for events like this. People
Yeah.
are thirsty for education. There are, I feel like, a lot more events, conferences, conventions, things like that for the commercial side of cleaning. That residential side, they are just like, please invite me to something. Like
Yeah.
they're really wanting to be involved. That you guys are able to do that in the way and fashion that you're able to do that digitally is a really great thing for the industry. So kudos for that. Keep that
Thanks.
coming. Love that.
Yeah.
A little bit more on just systems and automations.
Mhm.
What do you think separate companies that thrive with systems and automations from those that spin their wheels?
Um, So I think really what it comes down to is like documentation. I think that that's like the biggest thing is I think that most of the folks that are spinning their wheels, it's they tell themselves that they have systems. And honestly, just to be clear, like I have been a massive like culprit of this, that like my team is very good at documenting things. I am not, right? And so that they'll tell themselves that they have these processes or these systems in place. And really, what they mean is that they know what to do when those situations happen, or maybe even their team members know what to do when those situations happen. But it's still like knowledge in everyone's head. And then someone new joins the company, and like it's over time, they learn all of these different things rather than maybe having it presented and just there like solidly. And so, what happens is when you're much smaller and you don't have as much knowledge being passed around, and there's just not as much knowledge to share because you don't have as many procedures, that's not a big problem at all, right?
Mm,
But when you compound that over time and all of a sudden you get to 10 or 20 cleaners, what happens is the people that don't have those strict systems eventually hit some plateau where they can't out train the knowledge that's walking out the door when people churn. And so to me, that's like the biggest thing. It's if your documentation is not building month over month, you shouldn't be training on the exact same things. You should be
mm.
training on newer and newer things as your documentation behind gets better.
So good. Love that. All right, my last question. We've been ending the episodes with this, and I really like it. I call it the elevator speech. You've got 60 seconds to talk to a skeptic. If you had just 60 seconds to talk to a skeptical cleaning business owner to explore software, automation, technology, and things like that, what would you say to them?
So I would say that you're going to be very, very hard pressed to find a long running, very successful, very profitable maid service that's not avidly like leaning on technology. And there's a very, very good reason for that. So while I understand the skepticism, to me, it's inevitable if you want your cleaning business to survive that like you will need to eventually get like into tech. Now, I I don't think that necessarily means that you need to right now. Like, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but it is something that you should be looking like towards and be like considering or thinking about. But I think that the other big thing here is a lot of people will be quite skeptical because they had a terrible experience in the past trying to implement some technology. So technology, especially digital like online technology, is progressing at a rate much faster than anything that we've seen in the past. That if you had a terrible experience trying to get onto a software even 3 years ago, trying again today with that same software will probably be 10 times easier. But you can probably find another software like ZenMaid that will just make it unbelievably easy for you to get your foot in the door and to get started. So yeah, give it a shot.
I love that. So, Amar, hey, thanks for being a part of this conversation today. I think it's been incredibly insightful and energizing. So, I really appreciate you being here and sharing your perspective. Before we go, what is the best way for listeners to connect with you or to learn more about ZenMate?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say the first thing is to give a shout out to Stephanie Pipkin and the ZenMaid podcast. That's Filthy Rich Cleaners. If you're a cleaning business owner and you're listening to this, I guarantee you'll find multiple episodes in there that you'll find very entertaining or will resonate with. That yeah, Stephanie's doing a great job there. So if you want to learn more about ZenMaid, honestly, I would say just go check out that podcast, even though it has nothing to do with ZenMaid. But yeah, zenmaid.com if you actually want to check out the software. But in terms of like getting to know our company, give Stephanie like a listen. And yeah, I mean, I think that's really it. I mean, just head to zenmaid.com if you're interested in learning more about the software. We're easy to contact, easy to reach, and whenever you're ready to make the jump, we make it easier than anyone else out there to get onboarded and to get started. So yeah.
Love it. Appreciate it. Hey, and if you're watching this episode and you found it helpful, and how you're thinking about technology and how it interacts with your cleaning business, send it to a cleaning business owner friend of yours. Because if there's one thing I know about this industry, it is one of the most tight knit industries I've ever experienced. So you probably know five, six, seven. You probably have like two group chats full of other cleaning business owners that you could send this link to, so they can get some experience in learning more about technology in their business too. Because we do know at the end of the day, automation and technology isn't about replacing people, it's about liberating them to focus on what matters most. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.